Welcome. It's nice to have you here. I hope you enjoy it. I think you will.
You're listening to the Jam Session Podcast.
I was told that I could listen to the radio at a reasonable volume.
With Cowboys insider...
What's your name?
Jean-Jacques Taylor.
That's my name.
Radio personality and craft beer expert, Matt McLaren.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot. Comes from upbringing.
And now, the Jam Session Podcast.
It is indeed Jam Session. Subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend about us. And come hang for a while right here. The moment we've all been waiting for has arrived. Ladies and gentlemen, the radio, TV, and now podcast star, the sexy Jean-Jacques Taylor.
What up, dog?
I would be the non-sexy one, Matt McLaren. And this is Jam Session, the podcast, version 21, asking simply that you prepare to be dazzled.
If not entertained.
As we always are by all of our sponsors, we have several great sponsors. We appreciate their support. And I know many of you that really enjoy what we do. We're very appreciative of you. So please support our sponsors as they support us. And that includes Blue Star Motor Group. We've been telling you about these guys. Jacques has been perhaps trying to figure out a way to secure this Camaro because they still have that 2020 Camaro 2SS 1LE track performance package. Only 369 miles on it. It's showroom condition. The MSRP on this thing was over 50 grand, and they've got it at Blue Star Motor Group right now for $44,991.
I've been thinking, but I just can't pull the trigger.
You're just going to have to move some things around and make it happen.
Like my furniture.
But I'm assuming, somebody out there, you have a friend or perhaps you yourself is looking at this thing. So give Deb a call at Blue Star Motor Group. You can check it out online. They have pictures of their inventory, including this 2020 Camaro, on their website at bluestarmotorgroup.com. Inventory and pricing, and they'll get you taken care of. So check them out. They're doing great things, and they're big supporters of us at bluestarmotorgroup.com. And, of course, once you have a car, as I tell you all the time, and we all know this, you got to go get it worked on at some point. Freeway Tire Shop right there in Dallas. JR and the crew at Freeway Tire Shop will get you taken care of. Whatever your service needs are. And every month we have our state inspections. Every couple of months you need your oil change, your alignment, whatever general mechanic work, tires. Which every time you need tires, you're like, oh my God, what do I do now? Well, you go to Freeway Tire Shop and talk to JR. Check them out at freewaytireshop.com. You can schedule an appointment, request a quote. That's freewaytireshop.com. Again, another big fan, big supporter of Jam Session. So you guys get out there and support JR and Freeway Tire Shop. But let's get this rolling here this morning. And again, I say morning because we are recording this so that everybody knows on Tuesday, November 17th. And I know many of you will listen to this on Wednesday or in the future. But when you hear us talking about it, because the NBA draft is coming up tomorrow for us, and the Mavs, of course, have 2 picks. We're going to discuss that. We'll be talking with our ESPN NBA insider, Tim MacMahon, a little bit later here on the show. But we are going to talk Cowboys to start you off, because they are a few days away from what many of us believe is a move to 2-8 against the Minnesota Vikings. And yet, once again, one of the best marketers that the earth has ever seen. It's true, man. I mean, in a past life, you know that Jerry Jones was that dude who was figuring out how to get people to take those elixirs in gold mining towns.
Bro.
You can call me Brew. I actually like that.
That's what it is.
What a great nickname for me. Hey, Brew, what's up?
That's what Jerry does, man. I told you. I wrote a column about it last week. They sell hope better than anybody else in the league. And so, I saw my friends over there at the Dallas Morning News. They trying to buy into it today. Talking about the Cowboys' second half schedule or the last 7 games, and it's one of the easiest rides left for any team in playoff contention. Because if you look at it strictly from a Cowboys hope perspective, what Jerry and Steven love to sell and do it better than anybody else, you just ask yourself, and Matt McLaren might be willing to buy into some of this. Okay, you got Washington, you got the Giants, you got Philly. All those teams stink. We're certainly capable of beating all those teams. That's 3. San Francisco stinks this year. There's an opportunity to beat them. They're not the big bad boys that we thought were going to be Super Bowl contenders. Injuries have ravaged them. Cincinnati, they stink. That's 5 dubs right there, Matt. If you can win those 5 games and get 7 wins, you will win the NFC East. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Let's print up the caps and T-shirts. That's what the Cowboys want you to think, man. And hey, that's what they do. They sell hope. Now, have you bought into it, Matt? Are you hyped? Are you ready to go? Are you geeked?
No. Not at all, because and I'm a proponent of this, actually, and this is whether it's the Cowboys or any team. I don't believe the team should be allowed to make the playoffs if they finish below 500. Like 8-8, okay. You at least got to 500, and I know that it's all about winning the division and doing these things, but I think, and I've thought that for a long time, if you can't at least get to 500 to win your division in a crappy division, I don't think you should get in the playoffs. And so unless somehow he goes 6-1 or 6-1 to close this thing down and they're able to get to 8-8, then okay, cool. But 7-9, winning a crappy division, beating up on crappy teams to do it, that excites nobody. It really doesn't.
And I'm still of the belief that, say you win. All right, you win the games, you get to the playoffs. Do you really want to take your team into the playoffs with 7 wins and see what happens to you and go get beat by 20 or 30 non-competitive game? The Cowboys, though, will sell hope, and they'll tell you, hey, Matt, anything can happen once you get into the playoffs, baby, anything. And I just say that's not true. I mean, yes, can you have the occasional upset where, who was it? The 7-9 Saints won a playoff game, or maybe it was 7-9 Seattle won a playoff.
Yeah, I think it was Seattle.
7-9 teams won. Yeah, that can happen, but those odds are way against it, brother.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't excite anybody. Nobody is excited about a crappy team making the playoffs. But I will say this, because you brought up something that I think is true and people will actually go out and do, and from past conversations and past episodes of Whispers from the Star, we have learned that there is a belief in the organization with people that have been there that all that matters is butts in the seat. And if we look at it from that realm, a winning team is more exciting. People want to talk about it more. They want to hear about it more. You get burned out on the losing, obviously. So there's that. And this is true, which I don't understand it. I've never understood it. They will sell a ton of NFC East champion hats and T-shirts. They will. And it's true. And in a year in which they haven't been able to have as many fans in the stadium as they'd like, if you can figure out a way to keep people on board and keep them hopeful and sell hope that, yeah, if we make the playoffs, this, and this, oh, hell yeah, let's all go out and spend our money on Cowboys gear. I'm going to tell you this, and this is true. Now, I have bought Cowboys hats just like with the star on them or whatever. I will not buy any type of winning T-shirt or hat unless they get another Super Bowl. It's just not going to happen, because that's the expectation with this franchise. I'm not going to go out and buy NFC East division anything.
Should the expectation change?
That's a really interesting conversation, and I think it probably should. We've kind of alluded to that before when you look at the last 25 years. But I would say, and again, we've talked about this. I mean, imagine if you're like my brother who's 30 has no recollection of the Cowboys winning a Super Bowl. So it's somewhere along the way, your sports consciousness, and maybe you kind of remember it when you were a little kid. If you're 35, you were 10 years old when they won a Super Bowl. So maybe you remember it, maybe you don't. None of the clothes you bought when they won fit you anymore. So you're certainly not rocking any of the championship T-shirts or anything. So I do think there is a large generation of Cowboys fans that don't have the expectation that this is a Super Bowl competitive franchise.
Like, I don't think my dude has it.
How can you?
I mean, I think he just watches the game. He doesn't even have a playoff expectation.
It's really difficult for me because I know, at least I knew, that this was a Super Bowl competitive franchise with an ownership group that wanted to win. And I think Jerry likes making money. I think the Joneses enjoy it. But sometimes I do wonder, at what point do you make so much money where you don't really even notice it anymore? And is it a point now with the Cowboys where the money is good, you're the most valuable franchise on earth of any sport out there, that it's like, well, it'd be great to win, but if we don't, not like it matters because we're still swimming in cash?
That's a good question. But I think I think it's more subtle than that. Like, I don't think they have that conversation. Hey, if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. We got cash. I don't think they have that. I think they want to win. They'd like to win. They try to win. But the fact that this is exactly what I wrote in my column last week, man. They just lied to themselves so much about what's really going down that they always look at the positive. And very rarely do they take the hard look at themselves, and have that real critical Dr. Phil conversation. And maybe that's who needs to, maybe they need to sit down with Dr. Phil and get some truth about who they are and what they are.
Oh, wow. Maybe they do, but...
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, when you look at this season, and I get it, and I don't know, because I think this is an interesting dichotomy for me, because do you want, as a fan, your ownership group, or whether it's Jerry or Steven, who do all these public radio things and conference calls and all this, as a fan, do you want one of your owners, either the son or the king, which one, who cares, to come out and say, we understand we're not any good, we have sucked for the last 25 years, this is unacceptable, and we need to do things better because, let's be honest, this is a lost season? Or do you want them to try and spin the positivity and say, hey, yeah, we've struggled and this has been a unique year, but reality of it is we do have a chance to win the division, and if that happens, anything could happen.
But yeah, I mean, I get it, but I'm of the belief anything can happen. And so you're better off getting, now I'm not in favor of tanking because we've had that conversation, but
right.
If you're not good enough to win, then you're just not good enough to win. I'm in favor of that. I think you're better served by getting that top 3, top 4, top 5 draft pick in every round than you are winning a bad division with 6 or 7 wins and go and get thumped in the first round of the playoffs at the crib.
I agree. And at some point, I think the playoff burnout with everybody here, until you actually start winning in the playoffs, losing a wild card round game, we're all kind of like, oh, okay, same as always, still not good enough. People want this franchise to be good enough, and it hasn't been for 25 years. And going around, even with the problems of this season, the pandemic, the coaching change, the injuries, I feel like I would rather them acknowledge that this did not go the way that they wanted it to, that it's going to be an offseason where they've got to make some changes. And sometimes they seem like they do that, but then the problem is this whole division is trash, and you can, and that's the problem, is that it's not delusional. It's actually realistic that you could sit there and say, well, we can win the division. They can, right, because they're a game out, and they play all 3 of these other teams ahead of them. If all you do is win your next 3 games against the division and lose the rest, and you finish 5-11, there's a good chance you win the division at 5-11 if you do that. Seriously.
Woo, boy. That's the Dallas Cowboys for you, man.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous. And everybody should be irritated. And I don't know if there's that frustration. I hope there is from Steven. I don't know that Jerry has that anymore because he's got his gold jacket. He's got 3 rings. But Steven was a part of that, yes, but he wasn't the main driving factor. And sometimes I wonder, does he have that in him where he's driven and wants his own legacy and his own rings when he's really the guy in control?
I think they're still driven to win. Sometimes you can get lost. I mean, you want to, and you try, you just can't work your way out of it. That's why people go see therapists and everything else, because they want to succeed. They want to achieve certain things. They just can't quite figure out how to get out of their own way. And the Cowboys right now spend a lot of time in their own way. But see, what happens is, man, and the reason why this is such a hard year for them is they're going to literally sit around and say, hey, it's about the injuries. It's about COVID. It's not really about us. And that's when I say you lie to yourself, because it is a lot about you, because everybody else ain't suffering the way y'all suffering this year.
That's very true, especially when you look at a team like Cleveland that also didn't have anything going into the offseason. They weren't able to do any of those things. Kevin Stefanski comes in, and that's a 6-3 Cleveland team. And they've got talent. They've got a young group of people that have for the last couple of years been pointed at, and everybody's saying, okay, that's a team right there. They're going to make a run, and they've been failing. And the one year they actually start to look like they're going to is the year in which the Cowboys, everybody's been pointing at them with the same thing, and they've just fallen off, where Cleveland has actually risen up, won some games with a brand new head coach and a new system in which none of their guys got to go through it at all either. Now, to be fair, they didn't lose Baker Mayfield and they didn't lose Myles Garrett, and they haven't had nearly the injuries the Cowboys have had, but that's a part of it that I think they've got to look at and say, did we trick ourselves with what we thought this group of talent here on this team is, because you lose one or two guys and the whole thing just seems to fall apart like it always does.
Huge question. Huge. And that's the ones you got to be real about, man. It's about staying real, man. You know, I told y'all a lot of times. My dad said, I don't condone lying. But if you need to lie to other people. Don't ever lie to yourself. No good can come from that.
That's the truth. We'll see where it winds up. I'm not hopeful. No, I'm not optimistic. As I have said before, I think the ceiling for this team is 4-12. We shall find out exactly how it plays out. But I think 2-8 is on the way. And then if they lose to Minnesota, you got 6 games left. You got to go 2-4 in those final 6 games to finish at 4-12. Can they do it? We'll see. If that's what Jerry and Steven are happy about, if that makes them feel optimistic, then they're taking different medication than I do. But let's move on here as we continue and tell you about another one of our sponsors. And this is actually really awesome because you guys know Beer Geek Shop in downtown Rockwall really well by now. They were a big sponsor when we were on the radio. They're a big sponsor here on the podcast. We love these guys. It's a local family-owned business out there on the square in downtown Rockwall. Jason and Deidre are really great people. They love craft beer, and they will guide you whether you are a craft beer aficionado that has had gazillions of beers like me, or somebody who just hears us talking about it and gets curious and wants to know more. They can guide whomever it is to find a beer that you will enjoy at Beer Geek Shop in downtown Rockwall. And right now, the Jam Session 6-pack is available. 6 beers that Jacques and I both picked out ourselves at a discounted price of $22.50, available right now. All you got to do is go out to Rockwall and tell Jason, Deidre, hey, man, I'd like the Jam Session 6-pack, and they've got it ready to go for you. And there's some damn good beers in that thing.
That's a great collection of beers. You got some hazy IPAs. You got some stouts. You got a pepper beer. It's a great introductory to craft beer package if that's your thing. And if it's not, and you're an experienced craft beer drinker, then it's just good to get out and sample a little bit of what me and your boy take in.
That's very true. So get out there and support them. They've been big supporters of us, and we really appreciate that at Beer Geek Shop in downtown Rockwall. But as we move forward, it is time to take not our daily trip, but our quite frequent trip around the block as we all get some mental exercise here. So how about this? I found this story, and I thought this is interesting. And it feels like at some point we are all going to either be working for or associated in some sense with Amazon. And a new Amazon massive distribution center is coming. This time they are putting it in Richardson, a 141,000 square foot location that will cover 33 acres. And create 120 to 140 jobs in that area of Richardson. Now, this will be put in far northeast Richardson. For those that don't know this area, every time you drive around, you think, oh, this is Plano. No, somehow Richardson has this weird little pocket of their city that extends north of Bush into like East Plano, in between like Plano and Saxe and Garland up there. And there's this little weird quadrant of Richardson, and that's where they're putting this at Shiloh and Breckenridge up there. But, you know, these Amazon distribution centers, man, they keep building them. They keep creating jobs, and it really does feel like that. Like at some point, Amazon will just own Earth, and instead of Earth, we'll call it Amazon. It'll be the third planet from the sun.
Well, I mean, I don't think you're not, how do we like to say it? You're not wrong.
Right.
I looked at something a couple of weeks ago that said during the pandemic, Jeff Bezos, that's the owner of Amazon.
Right.
His money increased from like 80 billion to 220 billion. Why? Obviously, because everybody at the crib. And so you got to use Amazon to get your stuff that you want. I'm so indoctrinated into Amazon, man. Like I won't even buy something before I check the Amazon price. And then if it's close, I go, notice I didn't say better. I just said close.
Right.
Then I go with Amazon because I don't have to do anything except wait for it to show up in a day. It's, it's really one of the great things we've had. I have a very weird question now.
Yes, please.
And it's based off of Amazon.
Okay.
Like I know Amazon, it's from A to Z.
Yeah.
The logo. Okay.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Where the hell did Google come from? Like, what is Google?
I have no idea. I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe it was
what is Yahoo? Like, what are those two?
Well, Yahoo to me makes sense because it's one of the, like, you know, who was it? Yosemite Sam that would always say Yahoo. You know, and I could see.
Got to do with Yahoo?
I could see. I don't know, but just you come across something and you're like Yahoo, and it's a catchy word that people can remember. Google, I don't know. I don't know the origin of where Google came from, but I'm sure you could find it if you did a little research. Why is it called Google? The name Google came from a graduate student at Stanford named Sean Anderson. Anderson suggested the word Googleplex during a brainstorming session, and the guys that created Google countered with the shorter Google. Google is the digit 1 followed by 100 zeros, while Googleplex or whatever is 1 followed by a Google of zeros. So that's where it comes from.
So it's a number.
Yeah, basically, essentially, Google, now it's spelled differently. They changed the spelling of it, but Google is the digit 1 followed by 100 zeros. So that's essentially what their name means. So there you go.
Don't you love the internet?
Don't you? Everything is at the touch of your fingertips. You never have to leave the house ever again if you don't want to. Like one day we're going to all be out there. It'll be like that movie Blade where we'll see somebody walking outside. We'll be like, oh my God, a daywalker. How are you out in the sun?
Yeah, what is wrong with you, dude?
Yeah, so it's Amazon, which continues to build and build and build, especially around major cities like Dallas, Fort Worth. I mean, there's a massive Amazon distribution center out here by where I live that is, I guess technically that's Coppell, but it is huge. And then, of course, if you ever drive out north of Fort Worth, out by Alliance Airport, there's a whole Amazon Air, I don't even know what to call it, like not just a hangar, because it's like multiple hangars with a massive building out there where they fly in Amazon airplanes constantly all the time throughout the day and night.
Is that's got all the stuff so that the wait time gets less and less and less?
Yeah, I'm assuming so because I don't know how it works, but yeah, I mean, Amazon Air, I mean, they have their own air service now. And so you do that. It's like UPS or FedEx or whatever. They all operate and fly out of there all the time, too, out there in Alliance, which has become like a huge cargo airport. And then they've got their fleet of trucks and you just put them on the trucks and take them to wherever, I suppose. Or what it could be is like some of the items and then they take them to distribution centers, some of the more common items. And then that way these local distribution centers can get them to you at the end of the afternoon.
Yeah, it's amazing, really, how it's all strung together.
It is. I mean, it makes sense because sometimes I'll order something like really quick off of Amazon and it'll be like, oh, it'll be here by 4 o'clock or whatever. I'm like, well, I hope so because I can drive 15 minutes to go pick it up myself at the Amazon distribution center. But let's be honest, we're just too lazy.
Yes.
I want it on my doorstep. I want to open my door and see my package.
I want the drone to put it down. I want to order it and have it instantaneously appear.
That'd be badass. I can't wait for the drones. That'll be really sweet. And it's coming. I mean, within the next decade, I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's within 20 years, but there will be a time in our lifetimes where you'll be sitting out on your back patio and you'll just see drones whizzing by with packages.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was thinking about this. I can't remember whether it was this morning or yesterday morning. I remember having a conversation with the sports editor of the Dallas Morning News, probably like early aughts, 04, 05. And he was explaining something to me. He said, yeah, man, there'll be a time where, you don't read the newspaper. It's on some foldable thing or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, whatever, dog.
Yeah.
And I thought about it. It must have been this morning as I was reading the entire Dallas Morning News in newspaper form on my phone. At 6:30 this morning. And I was just thinking, all those years I got up, picked up the newspaper, came home, read it, or took it to the gym and did it while I was on the stair mill or whatever and read it. And here I am, man, in the palm of my hand reading the thing. And I haven't physically read a newspaper, bro. Maybe once or twice in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I don't think, well, that's not true for me. Because my mom and dad get the Sunday paper. So there have been times if I've been over there now with the pandemic and whatnot, haven't been nearly as often as I would like. But there are times if we're out there on a weekend or whatnot, or maybe they get Saturday and Sunday. That must be what it is. Because sometimes we'll be there on a Saturday night and I'll like kind of glance and read through the sports section that they got that morning. But that's the only time ever. Everything else I do is completely 100% online.
It's amazing. This is just a trip. And I typically read it on the iPad because it's even bigger and even faster.
Yeah, I mean, I started doing that with my books, which I know is, I read an article about local bookshops and how they're struggling with this because of Kindles and Amazon Fires and things like this. And I thought, that's sad and it does suck if you own a local bookshop. But at the same time, I don't know how you sit here and say, well, everybody needs to keep supporting these guys, which I'm a big local fan. But at the same time, like, where do you draw the line of technologically, this is just where everything is moving to?
You can't stop technology. And so you got to, it's real simple to me. And I don't think it's harsh. It's just what it is. You can either adjust, adapt, and improvise, or you can go the way of Blockbuster. I mean, it's just what it is, bro. You got to always be thinking, how's it going down? You know, CD players, CD disc. I mean, technology's on the move, man. DVDs, and we don't even watch DVDs anymore. Why? We just stream it. That's just the way it is.
That's very true.
If you don't adapt, you get gone. Why the hell are we on a podcast right now?
That's very true. You got to adapt. You know, if you're trying to keep right. I mean, radio is
that's
changing.
Yeah, radio's changing.
That's a very good point. I mean, this wasn't anything I ever considered, and I've talked about this before when I was younger, even 10 years ago. And now the podcast world has expanded to a point where just because you can't be on the radio, right? You can do what you do and continue doing what we did here in a podcast world, which is actually, oddly enough, more fun. It's more freeing, more creative, I feel like, than you could ever be on terrestrial radio. So you have to pivot and adapt.
Yeah, and it's got to be a hard pivot, like a one-step cut through the hole to the end zone.
That's very true, man.
Otherwise, you get your ass dropped for a loss.
So we'll continue with another story here on our trip around the block. And this is one of those where I just want to ask this question. What the hell is going on in Dallas? Because over the weekend, there were 7 murders in a 24-hour period. And we have already, with about 7 weeks, whatever it is, left in the year of 2020, we have surpassed last year's homicide total, currently sitting on 220 homicides this year, which means that by year's end, this is a city that somehow is going to be up over 250 murders in a calendar year, which is really sky high. Now, it's not, the 500 murders that this city was pumping out in the early 90s, but still, in modern times, this is by far the highest homicide count that they're going to see in about 30 years.
Now, the question is always, well, why? I think a lot of it probably has to do with the pandemic in terms of people being stressed and strained and short fuses, and I'm out of work, and so I got to go do, rob somebody or kill somebody or try to take something because I don't have any access to it. And, I think that's a little bit of it. The interesting thing to me, or the weird thing is, like, that feels like that doesn't feel like that feels like that's inner city Dallas.
Yeah, and a lot of it is the areas that many of us are aware of in Dallas that have constantly struggled with crime and things of that nature. And you're right. Now, there were shootings over the weekend in the Uptown area. We've seen Deep Ellum that has struggled with some shootings, but a lot of these are in the areas that they focus and have a higher police presence, which they're actually upping because of this. Now, they won't say, they're not publicly saying where these areas are, but the police chief did come out and say that they are upping police presence and patrol in 4 specific areas. It's also really interesting because they brought in the FBI to help with some of this, because there has been, and I don't know how many of you have paid attention to this, you may see it pop up on social media or whatnot, but there's something going on with the local rapping, like rap community, like music rap.
Yeah, bro.
Where another rapper was shot over the weekend, and they've also had some shootings in Houston connected to the rap world. And so because of that, they're able to bring in the FBI for some extra resources and help on this. But man, it's really wild. I don't know what it is, but something crazy.
I think what set it off was, now I don't know I can't remember which rapper it was because he wasn't a big name guy to me. He got shot on 35, hopped out the car, running down the highway. Dude got out of his car, ran him down, shot him, then drove off. And that kind of triggered everything. And so I think it's, in the rap world, man, you never know, because it could be something because you're talking about a bunch of knuckleheads in general, where it could be something as much as you hit me up on a diss record, and so I dissed you back, and then yours was too personal. So, okay, you think I'm not a man? Okay, let me show you what I'm all about. Or, somebody slept with somebody's girl, or you thought that they did. I mean, it's all kind of stuff, man. that people who are young and don't value life until it's gone, want to go to war over, whereas old people like me are like, man, y'all tripping.
Right. Yeah, it's wild. And obviously, I mean, we've talked about this before. We've been watching The Wire. We're finally on season 5. We only have like 9 episodes left in the whole thing. And I think it's season 3 of The Wire. Yeah, it is, because that's the more political season, where they're talking about the murders in Baltimore and how out of control they are and how pissed off they are because I don't care what you have to do. You're not letting this hit 300 by the end of the year. And then I'm listening to them and I'm looking at this. I'm like, oh, my God, we're on pace for that. And this is The Wire, like in Baltimore. And people, they view like, oh, this is a tough city and all this stuff with really horrible projects and whatnot. And then they're struggling with the same problem here in Dallas. So we'll see.
Most of these crimes happen in the same zip codes, because you're talking about zip codes where the socioeconomics are out of whack with the rest of the city. Right. Where there's a lot more despair, a lot more, there's none of that Jerry Jones hope down there. And so you get flashpoints like this from time to time.
Indeed you do. And that's what we're seeing here in the year of 2020. And obviously the chief of police is going to change, and they'll bring in somebody new at some point. And I think it's interesting because I have a better understanding, I feel like, of how that process works. And granted, Baltimore is not Dallas, and I know it's a TV show, but they wrote it with real people from the city. And it's a very realistic approach at how everything works in congruence. It's not just a police department or the mayoral office or whatever it happens to be. It all kind of has its own role. And it's so political about, even with the schools and whatnot of, okay, well, we know we're having problems here, but we need to make sure that voters in certain areas and the people in those communities that are leaders are happy. What do they want us to do? Can we afford to do that? Does it make sense with the rank and file? It's really fascinating. But let's have something positive to end our trip around the block, all right?
Yeah, please.
So how about this? A brand new brewery has opened up in Fort Worth. It's been open for a couple of weeks. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting out there because the name of it is Maple Branch, and it is over in Fort Worth. It is a huge place outdoors. Like, they have a really big beer garden out there over in the Fort Worth area. And they they do some IPAs and stuff like that. But from what I understand, this is one of those that they kind of went to Europe and were influenced by the European styles. So they do some European styles. Now, I haven't had any of their beers yet, so I'm not sure if they're any good or not. I don't know. But it's funny because it's a husband and a wife that started this, named Stuart and Alyssa, and their last name is Maples. Hence, Maple Branch Brewery.
I'm down for that.
Yeah, which is kind of cool because they do these beers in the massive outdoor area with a lot of seating, and they put in some big trees and things like that. And it's interesting. Anytime somebody opens, and there's been a few of them, and they're actually a little bit younger because I think they're in their late 20s. But It's interesting because this is one of those things where anytime somebody opens a business like this during a pandemic, you're kind of curious how it will go. But from what I understand, like, I've heard it through the vine, I don't want to say the grapevine, the hop vine. I've heard through the hop vine of the beer community, this is a really cool place and that they're doing some good things out there.
All right. Well, you would know through the grapevine or the hop vine whether that was true, just like you could tell me what brewers suck at different breweries across the North Texas. Yeah. Now, you don't put it out there, but you say, hey, that guy can't brew. That's why he's here, and that's why he left there, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that.
We were talking to the guys at False Idol, and they were like, we were talking about something, gossiping the way men gossip. And the guy was like, oh, yeah, I'd heard that. I just didn't want to say anything about it because, I didn't want to spread any gossip. But now that you bring it up, yeah, that sounds about like him. So, that's my whole point is saying if Matt says they're doing some good stuff over there, then they probably are doing some great stuff over there.
Yeah, that's very true. It's interesting like that because, and we've talked about this before in the local beer community, nobody likes to, on any public platform, or if you're around people that you're not real sure about who they are, then nobody will ever bash anybody's beer, ever. Like, it's very, very rare. Now, there are people that you get to know that you're friends with that in private conversations, when there's just maybe 3 or 4 of you that for sure you can trust, then you can talk about certain things in a really private setting and you can learn some things and hear some different things, but nobody Nobody would ever want to
say nothing around me. Pisses me off.
I mean, it's one of those, like, I would never on a public platform, because the local beer community needs support. And a lot of people, and this is, I think, some truth to this. Like, when we talk about like flawed beers and like a bad beer, and I'm always like, well, it's very rare to come across a bad beer. You have to be at a certain level in the beer world to really understand the differences of flaws and what causes them and picking them up in beer and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, so a lot of people, you say certain things like diacetyl, which I'm very sensitive to, tastes like butter. A lot of people that drink craft beer and enjoy craft beer, and there's nothing wrong with this, would taste it in a beer and not think there was anything wrong with it and have no problems with it. And then you get to a certain level when you've been around it a long time and you've been in it, around all these brewers and stuff. You're like, man, whoa, how did they not pick this up? And I can't believe they put this out there. But it's just the differences of, where you're at. And you never want to try and turn anybody off to the local scene, regardless of what it is, because some of these breweries especially are very community based. And is a great place for people that live in that local area to go hang out and enjoy themselves. And at the end of the day, regardless of whether the people that can judge beer think it's good or not, as long as it's getting support and people are going there and drink it, then it's good. I mean, really, at the end of the day. And I've been to some really, really bad breweries, man. Now, a couple of them that have gone away in Dallas, I would put on that list. But there's some not in Dallas that are in Texas that I've been to that I don't know how people were sitting there and drinking it, but they enjoyed going there and it worked, and so good for them. But yeah, Maple Branch Brewery is over there in the Foundry District is what they are calling it, this new Foundry District of Fort Worth. And I've seen a couple of pictures of this, and man, they've got a really nice kind of German-style beer garden. There are some individual tables, but there's a lot of those big, long tables where you can sit at and you kind of get to stop down and hang out with a few people. And like I said, they're
new friends.
Yeah, make some new friends. They've got a Kolsch. It looks like they've got a Bock. And then I thought this was interesting because they're doing some of those types things, but they also offer a milkshake IPA and a Russian Imperial Stout. So I'd like to get over there. It's off Whitmore Street for those of you over there in Fort Worth area. You may know where that is, but Maple Branch Brewing. Good for them. Hope they find success. As we continue here on the podcast, I want to tell you once again about our buddy, attorney Chris W. Fitzgerald, one of our great sponsors with Fitzgerald Law. You're going to need a lawyer at some point in your life. It may even be in a situation you didn't even realize, like me, like, man, you need a will. Well, how do you do that? You call attorney Chris W. Fitzgerald. Now, you can give him a call at 972-842-4220 or find him online at chrisfitzgeraldlaw.com. But he specializes in virtual law practice, handling pretty much all your needs almost exclusively online, which, and again, we've talked about this, Dallas County, where we live, just set a record for single-day coronavirus cases. So it's starting to spike again. And, of course, welcome to the new world, courts, where you sometimes have to go in front of a judge or whatnot for legal things. Courts are changing, and many are moving from in-person hearings to telephonic or Zoom-type meetings. And this is where you need Chris, because he is a master at this. You can do all things online with Chris. You can sit down with him on a Zoom meeting, talk about your legalese, whatever questions you may have, whether it's probate, business transactions, contracts, consumer bankruptcy. He can help kind of navigate you through legalese, which for me, I'm a complete moron at.
And so the best thing is you don't have to leave the comfort of your home.
Exactly. It's all virtual. So give Chris a call, 972-842-4220, or find out more information at chrisfitzgeraldlaw.com. And again, we are recording this as a reminder on Tuesday, November 17th. The Dallas Mavericks and the NBA will draft on Wednesday, November 18th. Free agency officially begins on Friday, November 20th. So the Mavs have some big things that could be happening this week. Of course, we're already seeing some big moves around the NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks are basically doing anything and everything they possibly can to satisfy the Greek Freak to keep him in Milwaukee. Reports surfacing that there is a belief he is going to go ahead and sign his Supermax deal, which, of course, would keep him in Milwaukee for 5 years, essentially, ideally, theoretically, but that he is going to stay in Milwaukee and would not be a true free agent on the market next offseason, as a lot of teams were saving cap space for him. They have really thrown some things around the NBA here over the last day or two, in a sense, trying to tell Giannis, like, look, man, we know we disappointed you this year. We will do whatever it takes to win, to build around you. Please don't leave. What do you want?
What you need, dog? Let us know.
I wonder if it's like a LeBron situation with him in Milwaukee, where it's like, hey, we can make this deal. Yes or no, Giannis? And he goes, yeah, that'll work for me. Cool, do it.
Oh, I think it's a lot of that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, hey, give us a list of guys that you like. We'll run them past a coach, see who he thinks fits and meshes best. We'll get back to you like, hey, you gave us a list of 5 guys. These are the 3 that mesh the best with us and what we want to do. We'll go, give us, we'll try to rank them and, go get them. And, Drew Holiday from New Orleans has been good. He's one of the best defensive guards in the league. He's averaging 19 points a game. And he gives them another upper echelon player to go with Middleton and to go with the superstar. And you hope that that's enough.
Yeah, so the first of the trade, as you just mentioned, the Bucks acquired Drew Holiday from the New Orleans Pelicans in exchange for Eric Bledsoe and George Hill, plus 3 first-round picks, and there will also be pick swaps involved. So that is a massive haul, obviously, for the Pelicans as they try to build around a young Zion Williamson down there in New Orleans and pick up all kinds of draft capital. And then after the Bucks make that deal, so they bring in Drew Holiday, as you mentioned, to go along with Chris Middleton and Giannis, the Bucks then made another move, and this time they pick up Bogdan Bogdanovic from the Sacramento Kings in a sign and trade, and they will send Dante DiVincenzo, DJ Wilson, and some other dude, Ilyasova, over to Sacramento in exchange for Bogdan Bogdanovic, who is 28 years old and will join the Bucks with a new contract. Of course, nobody knows what that is, at least that we can see. And then Milwaukee will also pick up Justin James in the deal. So they have added Bogdanovic and they have added Drew Holiday in hopes that this is enough to give them what they need to get over the hump in the Eastern Conference and get to the NBA Finals. And then, of course, obviously try and win a championship.
Bogdanovic, what do you know about him?
He's a guy that is, because of the Brogdon thing, when they decided not to sign Malcolm Brogdon last summer, he kind of will replace his ability to shoot and play make and do some of those things. An offense that was already really good, he will add just even more offensive eliteness, I suppose, some juice, if you want to call it that. So that'll be that. And Bogdanovic obviously is a much more reliable shooter than a guy like DiVincenzo, who I believe is 5 years younger than him, and is going to be just an overall upgrade from that role as a scorer for Milwaukee.
Yeah, I would say so. He averages 15 points a game last year, shot 44%. And I was looking to see what he shot 37% on threes, and he's a career 37% shooter on threes, so he can help you spread the court, which is what they like to do with Giannis. So seems like a good fit from there.
Yeah, I think it's fun, man. He also has one of my most fun names ever to say, Bogdan Bogdanovic. It's just fun to say, Bogdan Bogdanovic. It sounds like a fake name, like if you made up a fake guy.
Man. And this is the problem. It's not a problem. It's just what it is. He's a first-round pick, taken 27th overall. And he showed up in the league averaging 12 points a game as a rookie. And so, that's what happens. Although, I mean, he's not a real rookie because he showed up at 25 years old because he played in Serbia. But you can find guys that can help you throughout the league because basketball is the ultimate international sport up there with hockey. You just got to know who to take, and that's why I like Donnie Nelson in this situation.
Yeah, I do as well. And, of course, the other things that are emerging, and the Rockets are making moves, we shall see if James Harden gets his apparent wish, which, from all reports, he wants to go to Brooklyn and team up with KD and Kyrie, or Philadelphia. But he wants out of Houston. He's done in Houston after once again failing to get to the NBA Finals, does not have a ring, has basically accomplished. There's nothing else for James Harden to really want in his career other than a championship. And so we'll see, as we have seen with stars in the league before, can you force your way out of Houston for something that makes sense for Houston to do with Brooklyn or Philadelphia to move you to a place where you want to go to give you a better opportunity to win a title?
The question is whether James Harden, the question is not the talent. The question is he a championship player? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't think by himself he is.
Well, I mean, bigger than that. Are you willing to sacrifice your points and some of these other things to win a title? Because a lot of folks say that they are. But then when it's really time to do it, will you? Let's just say this deal goes through for whatever. And it's him, Kyrie, and Durant in some kind of team.
Right.
Because who knows what they'd have left after they traded for Harden. Are you willing to average 22 points a game instead of 36 if you're James Harden to put yourself in contention to win a title? You know what I'm saying? What are you willing to sacrifice? Because, you know, the three of y'all can't take 33 shots apiece. Or maybe you can, but your team ain't going to be no good probably. Somebody got to sacrifice. Dwayne Wade. Why'd he win a title? Because he said, you know what, LeBron, I'm going to defer a little bit and let you be the lead dog. I mean, even LeBron this year, he deferred a little to Anthony Davis. Hey, I'm getting older, young fella. I'm going to need you to take over some of this. Is James Harden or Kyrie or Durant, any of those guys, capable right now their careers giving up a little bit to win a title?
I don't think KD is. I think that's why he wanted out of the Warriors. Why he left, because he wanted more. He wanted to be more of a focal point, even when he was healthy, and he was a big focal point of what they were doing. So we'll see. But, you know, the Rockets obviously sending Robert Covington to the Blazers for Trevor Ariza, and also picked up another first-round pick in this draft and a first-round pick in 2021 that's protected. But we'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of rumors shaking around the NBA of how these things are going to unfold. Now, in regards to the Dallas Mavericks, this is where it's going to get really interesting because, and we're going to chat with ESPN NBA insider Tim MacMahon here on this podcast, and he'll shed some light on some of these things. But they are getting calls. There is interest in both of their picks, whether it's 18 and 31 as a package deal to move up in the draft or in exchange for a player, whether it's 31 in exchange for like a Danny Green, 18 in exchange for somebody. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Mavs make a move. I think, to me at this point, I would actually be surprised if they use their own pick for the guy they want at 18 and 31 both.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that they are, Donnie and Cuban strike me as guys who have always been aggressive. So I think they will try their best to make a bold move if one is there. The first thing I thought of when Danny Green got traded was, Oklahoma City doesn't have any need for him. Right. They'll go try to acquire him. And all of a sudden, that's that 3-point wing defender you were looking for. That helps. Gives you a little more flexibility. And then I always wondered, man, like, how high can they go with the 18th pick? Do they have to package him with somebody? Maybe they do, and maybe that allows him to get up into the lottery. And if you package him with somebody, who are you packaging him with? Dwight Powell coming off an injury? I don't know. But I think they'll try to make a move. They'll try to do something because you got to show the young fella, we trying. Right. It's not just words. Because you know what they say, man, you talk so loud, I can't see what you're doing or something like that.
Okay. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know what the Mavs are going to do. Obviously, nobody does. I think they're going to be very active. They're going to listen. They're going to make inquiries on things, and we're seeing a flurry of moves around the NBA as we always do. I mean, some teams, the NBA is actually really good at this. It's a little crazy, but I almost feel like you see it more in the NBA than any other league where teams recognize, okay, we're not any good and we're not one guy away. We don't have that guy. So sell out what we can and let's acquire either super young guys or draft picks, and we'll just suck for a few years.
So you're saying they're the anti-Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen that. We saw the Mavs, in a sense, almost try and do that. I think Oklahoma City is going through that right now. We've seen teams like the 76ers in the past that have done that. Now, does it always lead to a championship? Of course not. But you can turn around if once you get one of those guys and you believe, or a core of young guys that you believe you can grow with, then I think you see a lot of that. Now, Minnesota, obviously, it has never worked for them. But
dude, it's like anything else, bro. It's the organization, man, and whether they can make the right moves. That's why. Who's that? Is that is that which team's got like 16 first-round draft picks now?
Oklahoma City.
Yeah, like if you don't have you trust Sam Presti to make the right moves. But if you gave those 16 picks to Sacramento, you'd be like, okay, so what? You ain't gonna know what to do with them anyway.
Right. When you look at the Mavs, obviously the rumors, like you said, Danny Green, the obvious connection that could be, could they work something out that makes sense? Sure. The other guy from Oklahoma City, Danilo Gallinari, who apparently, if we'll remember back to the trade deadline, they had a deal in place to acquire him, but didn't do this because he wanted to test free agency. Now, he will become an unrestricted free agent on Friday, but the Mavs do not have the room to sign him. Keep in mind, he made $22.6 million last season. They have right now the $9.3 million mid-level exception. So the only way they would do this would be a sign and trade with Oklahoma City. So then you have to look at it and say, okay, is Gallinari going to be willing to do something at 32 years old for 1 year? Because the Mavs are going to want to keep it at 1 year for the salary cap flexibility that they have acquired for next offseason. Or would they do something? Do they like him enough? And does it make sense? Okay, we're going to give away some of our salary cap flexibility in 2021 because we want Gallinari that bad. Let's do a sign and trade, and we'll do a 2 or a 3 year deal or something.
Yeah, those are all the tough questions, man. You know, and some of this is whether you holding out the pipe dream for the Greek Freak. Okay, it doesn't work out with all the moves they made this year. He gets fed up that he wants to get moved. Do we have some assets we can trade for? All that goes into play. I'm at the point where I wouldn't be surprised at anything the Mavericks did. Only thing that would surprise me would be if they stood pat. If they took somebody at 18 and somebody at 31st and they put those guys on their team, that would surprise me. Anything else, man, I'm not surprised.
No, and of course, there's a rumor about Lou Williams. Yes, Sweet Lou. Lemon Pepper Williams, or whatever he became.
Hell yeah,
as.
Bring him to town.
Now, he's 34 years old, but he's a 3-time Sixth Man of the Year, and ESPN had reported on Monday that he's a popular choice around the league as a potential trade partner for that 18th pick in the draft on Wednesday night. We'll see, but Donnie Nelson was asked about specifically Lou Williams and said, that is a very, very popular pick. Pretty much every team in the league has inquired in some form or fashion on that pick.
Sweet Lou's the kind of guy you bring in, and you bring him in to help you win a couple games in the playoffs, man. Because he can bring that instant offense, and on a night where somebody other than Luka needs to score, he can step up and drop 30 on you. So it makes sense to me, and everything is all about winning. And it's about winning now. There's no need to wait. You got one of the top 5 players in the NBA. You don't have to wait. It's time to go.
Yeah, and if they do trade the pick, because keep this in mind, there's a rule in the NBA where you can't trade picks in consecutive drafts, first-round picks.
Right.
And so if they do trade the pick, the Mavs will actually select. They have to take a selection with the 18th pick, but if they have decided to trade it, what would happen is they would then draft whoever they have agreed to a trade with and say, okay, well, we want you to draft this dude at 18, and then we do the trade. But just so when you're watching the draft, just because they have selected a guy at 18, they have to. It has to be the Dallas Mavericks select, and then they could immediately trade that person. But just keep that in mind when you're watching the draft. So enjoy the Mavs, and of course, we'll have our latest thoughts on whatever it is they end up doing on the podcast that drops on Friday. So make sure you tell your friends. You're enjoying the Jam Session podcast. Tell your friends to subscribe. Check out the podcast. You can go to our website, jamsessionpodcast.com/home, and that'll take you to a variety of ways. Or, of course, just find it on whatever podcast platform that you enjoy. Amazon, Spotify, Apple, however you listen to podcasts. Tell your friends. We're everywhere, man. We appreciate the support as we try to grow this with all of you out there.
We're a couple of rock stars, bro.
Indeed. That's how I like it. Joining us now here on the Jam Session podcast, used to have him on the show all the time, and joining us, of course, on a wild time period in the NBA, our ESPN NBA insider, Tim MacMahon. And before we get into the Mavs with you, it looks like Milwaukee is trying to go all in on trying to get Giannis to do the Supermax and really show him that they are serious about winning a championship.
Yeah, Milwaukee, which is a great brewing city, obviously, and so I just want to negotiate first and foremost. I do get some free beer out of this, right?
Yeah, you know what? You're right, because New Glarus is up there, and, man, they make some really good beer.
Well, we got a jam session 4-pack for you.
Yeah, we can do that.
Hey, I expect delivery. But no, this move, obviously, they gave up a bunch. I mean, they gave up essentially 5 years worth of first-round picks when you include swaps for a player who's on an expiring contract. So this is push all your chips in. And this is the Bucks don't make this move without discussing with Giannis and him saying, yes, let's do it. And almost certainly without a commitment from him that if you do this move, I will sign that super max. So the teams that were hoarding cap space, in the hopes of chasing Giannis in free agency next summer, which obviously we're talking Mavericks, Heat, Raptors. I think those teams, they don't necessarily give up the ghost on Giannis. They don't necessarily say, well, Giannis is off the table for the next 5 years. But it flips from trying to chase him in free agency to trying to be able to be in position to have the kind of trade assets to where if this thing goes belly up, if this risk blows up in the Bucks' face, then just for example, the Mavericks would be in position to make the kind of offer that it might take to get Giannis in a trade from Milwaukee. And look, that only happens if it goes belly up with the Bucks. If Giannis says, hey, we gave it a shot, and this might be the kind of conversation they're having in advance, Giannis saying, I'm going to sign this, but understand that I still might want to move on. And I know the Mavericks, as one example, are trying to put themselves in a position to pounce if that is indeed the case. But, obviously, the all-in on Giannis, if you're another one of these teams, you absolutely have to have other options and chase other avenues at this point.
One more thing before we get to the Mavs. Is James Harden really going to get shot out of Houston?
Well, listen, I always anticipated that it would be within a year. Okay. But just because, it's not hard to read the tea leaves. It's not, you can look at the Rockets right now and say, you know what? The window is either, even before all this stuff about Russ and Harden preferring to be elsewhere, you could look at it and say, boy, that window might just barely be cracked, but it's either closed or rapidly closing. And, they went all in. You talked about a move that backfired. Their trade for Russ, they mortgaged a lot of future draft capital for a move that didn't get them any closer to winning a championship, and probably just sped up the process as far as them having to close that chapter. And so, you knew Harden as a guy who is at least midway into his prime, maybe only has a few prime years left, doesn't have a championship to his resume, basically has done everything else. There was going to be a time where he was going to look at that situation and say, I've got to have a better chance to win a championship, and it's just not happening in Houston. And he paired up with Dwight Howard, didn't work. Paired up with Chris Paul, worked pretty well the first year, and then, basically Harden decided it was time to close the book on that. And then, paired up with Russ again. That didn't pay off. And so the next time that James Harden was going to pair up with another superstar or perhaps superstars, he was going to have to be the ones to pack his bags. And again, I thought, and this still might be the case, that one more year in Houston and then it's going to happen. But it certainly sounds like he's pushing for that timetable to be sped up. Now, the thing about it, the Rockets, they're trying to kind of convince him, hey, be patient, give us a chance. I think more than anything, the Rockets front office, which, new general manager, an owner who's not very experienced, but they are determined not to be bullied into making a move that doesn't make sense for them. And it's getting more and more difficult by the day.
So we move into the Mavs, and of course, for those listening, we are recording this on the Tuesday before draft day, so many of you will listen to this on the Wednesday of the NBA draft. And as we know, the Mavs right now at least have the 18 and 31 picks. What are you hearing in regards to Dallas as they try and make some sort of a move to, in a way, do what Milwaukee is doing to show Luka that they're trying to build a championship contender right now?
Yeah, and obviously it's a totally different timetable where they essentially have a guaranteed 5.5 more years of Luka when you look at he'll sign a 5-year Supermax extension. I mean, go ahead and pencil that in. But they also have a guy who's playing at the MVP level right now, which opens up a championship window for them. And so, the Mavericks are doing two things. They're trying to, take another significant step forward next season. And they're also, as I said earlier, they're trying to position themselves to where they can make attractive trade proposals, whether it's for, pie in the sky, Giannis if things don't work out in Milwaukee, or, Bradley Beal for superstar X. And the way to do that is to get good young talent because, it's obviously it's talent, and it's also talent that for a team that would be in a rebuilding situation is relatively inexpensive and controllable. Talent on rookie contracts really has significant value. And so, they've got two chips to be able to do that at 18 and 31, and those two chips also give them a lot of flexibility to move around. I saw Brad Townsend reported, and this doesn't fit the young, but this does fit the, get better and compete next season. They're absolutely interested in Danny Green. They've been interested in Danny Green
right.
since he was, since he re-upped with San Antonio, and then obviously last summer. Danny Green makes a ton of sense for them. He doesn't make sense for them with that 18th pick, but if there's a deal that can be worked out using the 31 pick as the main chip, the Mavericks are absolutely interested in Danny Green, a good, solid pub bet. Not by no means in his prime, but still a really good defender, still a really good spot-up shooter. A really nice complementary fit with Luka and Porzingis. 18, the Mavericks have had discussions about moving up into the lottery. I'll give you an example of a rumor that's been out there. You take 18 and Jalen Brunson, and you move up to 8 with the New York Knicks. And that makes a lot of sense from a Knicks perspective. Jalen Brunson was represented by Leon Rose, who's now the president of the New York Knicks. Oh. And Leon Rose has known Brunson since he was in the womb. Rick Brunson, Jalen's dad, was one of Leon Rose's first clients. There's deep connections with Brunson's dad and Tibbs. Brunson is absolutely the kind of young player who, the Knicks want to kind of build a culture of Brunson type of players. So, and he's a good player. So again, that's a rumor. That there is sometimes that has at least been discussed. Does that make it likely to happen? No, but again, it's an example of the kind of thing that the Mavericks are looking. And all these things, and with a deal like that, that's probably an on-the-clock deal if it happens, depending on what player is there. But the other thing about this draft is, if you're the Mavericks, you're looking at it and saying, how much difference is there really between 8 and 18? If they've got, kind of say 5 guys that they kind of consider very similar, if they have similar grades on 5 guys, they might be thinking, it's not worth moving up if they feel like they can get the same player or a similar player at 18. But you know how Donnie Nelson rolls, how Mark Cuban rolls. They're having conversations about moving up, moving back in terms of years. There's certainly a possibility of the Mavericks trading this pick for a future first rounder. They're going to have conversations, the Danny Green type of conversations about bets or a bet that can help them right now. There's a lot of reason for teams to be calling the Mavericks right now because they have essentially 2 first-round picks if you look at 31 that way.
Now, those are a bunch of different scenarios. What do you think is most likely to occur? Hey, man, you're the Mavericks whisperer.
Listen, you know what? I honestly would just be guessing. I would love to tell you that.
Well, that's just your educated guess. We trust you.
My educated guess is that they trade 31 for something. Whether that is a bet. Now, again, with Danny Green, there's also a feeling that Sam Presti, in case people aren't aware, Danny Green moved from the Lakers to OKC in the Dennis Schroeder deal. And obviously OKC is in a rebuild. So, he's a bet and expiring contract. But there is some thought that Presti might hold on to him for the trade deadline, because he might have an opportunity to kind of create 2-3, multi-team type of bidding war there. But I think they moved 31 for something, whether it is, if they can maybe get a future first, if there's a player somebody really likes, or a vet. And my guess is after a lot of conversation that they probably make a pick at 18. But let me emphasize, I'm still in the dark there. That is just a guess because, you could tell me 3 or 4 different scenarios there, and I would say, yeah, there's a chance of that.
Let me ask you this then. Zach LaVine, that rumor had bounced around that the Mavs had checked in on that and the Bulls' willingness to perhaps do something there. Any truth to what I would imagine would be an awesome pickup for the Mavs and Zach LaVine? Any way that could happen?
I would put that under the never say never. I haven't discussed Zach LaVine specifically with anybody over there. I'm going to tell you, though, I wouldn't love that. I wouldn't love that because, well, here's the deal. Zach LaVine is a scorer, but that's all he is, and putting the ball in the hole has not been the Mavericks' problem. Now, if you're saying, how could Zach LaVine help the Mavericks? Hey, yeah, the Mavericks could absolutely use another guy other than Luka who can create his own, another guy other than Luka who can, really create offense. LaVine more so for himself than other guys, but, basically take a little bit of the burden off of Luka's shoulders in terms of being the sole facilitator in a lot of cases. But I have a hard time seeing how you can put together a top 10 defense if your backcourt is Luka Doncic and Zach LaVine. And if you're going to be a championship team, you don't have to be necessarily an elite defense, but you can't be a bad defense. So that to me is why Zach LaVine is questionable fit at best. If you told me, hey, Zach LaVine coming in as as instant buckets off the bench, that would be intriguing. Selling Zach LaVine on that role, though, good luck with all that.
Fair enough. All right, Tim MacMahon, we appreciate it, man. Thanks for the time and jumping on with us here this morning.
Thanks, bro.
Oh, it's a pleasure, boys.
So, the Peep Show, it is time. It's funny because we haven't done this in a couple of weeks. And the last time we skipped it, we had all these people that hit us up on Twitter or Instagram like, hey, did I miss the Peep Show? What happened?
See, sometimes you don't know how much people love something until you take it away.
Yeah, it's very true. And I will forfeit this segment to you because, as I mentioned earlier, we are still on the wire trying to knock that out. And we are now on season 5. We have 9 episodes left in the series of The Wire. And so we will wrap that up, I would imagine, by next week. And I'll be moving on. I think we're going to try that Netflix show about chess, The Queen's Gambit.
Okay, you're going to have to tell me about that. I don't want to see a show built around chess.
Well, see, I thought that too, but I have heard so many good things about it from so many different people. And it is just getting phenomenal reviews. I'm like, damn, okay, I got to check that out and see what it's all about.
If it's great, tell me about it. I'd be, I'll go watch it.
Yeah, and I wanted to watch it with my son because he enjoys chess, but it's TVMA, and it's funny because for those that don't know, if you're a parent, because look, sometimes things on television are rated a certain rating, and then you go in there and you look at it and you go, okay, well, I'm not as concerned about, obviously, some of the language and things. Now, if it's super heavy, I'm not going to do that. But if there's 4 mentions of the S word or whatever, I'm like, whatever. Now, if there's nudity in it, that's a no-go. Sex scenes and stuff like that is definitely a no-go. Graphic, super gratuitous violence is a no-go. But there's websites that you can go to that it's like Parental Review or something that'll tell you why it's rated PG-13 or R or TVMA. And for instance, I looked up The Queen's Gambit because Maddox really likes chess. Maybe he would like this show. And I looked up why it was rated TVMA, and it says the F word a few times, and it also says How many letters are in that one? That would be, let's see, 10. The 10-letter CS.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, we're going to have to skip this one. And apparently there's
He might not even know what that is.
No, but he doesn't need to at this point.
He doesn't need to be inquiring.
Right, and that's one of those.
I've never heard that, Dad. What is that?
Yeah, and then, there's a couple of sex scenes in it. I was like, nah, this isn't happening. Sorry, dude.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
man.
maybe a few years from now, we'll sit down and have a Queen's Gambit rewatch. But what have you been watching lately? Because you threw out a couple of shows.
Well, I think I'll start with, I may have mentioned this, Good Morning Veronica. Well, I got to the end of it. And Good Morning Veronica, I think, because they do it pretty good, I think it's a dub show, but they did it so good, it's not goofy to me. But I think it's set in Brazil. And it's basically Veronica is some kind of police officer, detective, because she wears she doesn't wear a uniform. And it's about her trying to help this abused woman who's married to this psychopath serial killer who just happens to be like the head of the military police. And it's all about her sneaking around trying to say, let me help you. And she, like any person in an abusive relationship, no, because if he finds out, it's just going to be worse for me. And so it goes down a rabbit hole of why he is the way he is, why she stays in the relationship, because she's often conflicted about these girls that he goes and gets. He makes her watch while he strings them up and does all this kind of vile stuff to them. Ultimately, and it's one season, man, and I think it had 8 episodes, but they were pretty good. And the last episode was one of those where, oh my, I didn't really see that coming. Bravo to y'all. I just never saw it coming. And y'all should know by now, those are my favorite shows. Basically, and I'm not giving away anything here, but somebody, basically somebody you think doesn't get it, gets it, and you're just like, wow, really?
Yeah, those are the best. I
didn't think y'all had the cojones to pull that one off. And I always like to say, man, my comparison is always Rita and Dexter, where you just never saw it coming. It's just like, well, yeah, it's Rita. She's a key character. And you're just like, oh, wow. Well, I guess she was a key character. And so I give 2 thumbs up to Good Morning Veronica. It's got a lot of moving parts to it, and I found all of that very interesting. And they set up a season 2, and the season 2, that might be real watchable, Matt, because there's a lot going on in here. It's some character development that you would probably enjoy.
I like a good character development, and I also like what you're talking about, and that's one thing, especially in shows like Sopranos or The Wire, that is centered around a lot of crime and a lot of people that are doing bad things. And sometimes it's not even the drug dealers in The Wire. Sometimes it's the cops and whatnot. When they get off, it's just the world, right? Like at some point, if you are around that era, that, I guess, segment of society, at some point, you're going to get got.
Right. That takes us to Blood on Rome. I think we talked about this briefly a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell y'all who turned me on to it. You would never believe. Okay, I'm going to throw this out here, Matt. Amongst the circle of people we know, which is, for purposes of this discussion, people who used to work at ESPN 103.3, people who cover the Cowboys beat on a regular basis, you would never believe 2 people who are just like the best of buddies. Well, let me rephrase. They're not the best of buddies. They talk all the time about what they're watching on TV and recommend shows to each other.
Really?
I mean, like the way we talk about shows, they talk about shows. I give you 2 guesses. It's an odd couple, so it's not like, oh, surely you're talking about, Todd Archer and Jacques Taylor. No. That's an odd couple. It's a couple of people you would never think to put together.
From ESPN.
And this Cowboys beat the circle of people that we all know.
I mean, that's okay, man. Wow.
I mean, like you could say
Allen and Chill.
See, that's the kind of guess I'm talking about. That's exactly the kind of guess I'm talking about. That's not it, but I'll give you one more because now you know what kind of guess I'm talking about. These are 2 people who talk about TV shows and recommend TV shows to each other all the time. Okay. And they recommended this show to me.
All right, Nate Newton and John Machota.
another high-quality guest. It's Tim Cowlishaw and Calvin Watkins.
Really? Interesting. Okay.
They recommended this. I can't remember who recommended it to who, but Calvin recommended it to me. Blood on Rome. When I tell you this show is wild, it is wild. Wild. And it centers around, it's based in Rome, okay? And it's the mafia and gangsters and all this other stuff, but it's centered around a traditional mafia family, all right? That's one aspect. It's also centered around a gypsy family, okay? That's kind of new to me. Then it's also got another mob family, and it's got a guy with ambition who wants, who's like, some kind of city government guy.
Right.
Those four entities, 2 mob families, a city government guy, and this gypsy family. And dude, it's 3 seasons. They just released the 3rd season. I went back and watched the first 2, obviously, because I hadn't seen the show. And the first 2 seasons are really good. There's a lot of, and how about this? The head of the gypsies is gay. All right. And this is only interesting to me because you don't see a lot of gay mobsters because it's such a world of machismo. And he's got this, what do you call it? This arranged marriage. And obviously it's not working because he's not interested in her. So that's kind of an underlight. Dude, these are real gangsters, man. So they're having all these backdoor deals and all these meetings about how you get stuff done in the city. And when I tell you, Matt, that season 3, the first 2 seasons are really good. Season 3 is unlike anything you've ever seen. I had about, oh, snap, I can't believe it. I did that about 3, maybe 4 times, dude. And I was just stunned by the stuff going on in this show. The people who died, the deals who were made, the way people found their demise. And it basically what it says is what you were talking about. If you enter this life of crime, it's just hard to get out, man.
Yeah,
it's just hard to get out. If you enter this world of crime and you get up there at the highest level, it's just hard to get out, dog. That 3rd season, Matt, is amazing. It's amazing. The first 2 are really good, but the 3rd season, the one they just released, it is absolutely amazing. Matter of fact, I wish you'd go watch it, man, because then I can really talk about it. Because it is wild. And that's Blood on Rome, dude. Now, mind you, I've been watching a lot of shows because I've been doing a lot of work. So there's been the TV's on and I've been watching it, multitasking. And sometimes I got to go back and rewatch an episode because, they got a lot of Italian in it sometimes. Mm-hmm. The last show I was watching, Matt, is Undercover. Did you see season 1 of Undercover?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, because I don't know what it is, I don't think.
This is a traditional undercover where this man and this woman go undercover to this trailer park because a big mobster.
Man, you're watching like all these weird ass foreign shows. These are all, every show you've brought up is foreign and either subtitled or dubbed over.
But they're really good. And I'm not distracted by the dubbing because the dubbing is done at the highest level. And Undercover is great because, again, season 1 was pretty good because to get the mobster's wife to talk, the other undercover became a lesbian sort of and seduced her and, she wanted to run away with her.
So this is like it says it's a Belgian Dutch language crime drama.
Yeah.
So is it subtitled?
No, they do that high level dubbing, man. So what happens is mostly it's English that they're talking, and then occasionally they drift into French, and then when they're reading text messages, they subtitle the text messages because they write them in Belgian. But it's really good, man. I wouldn't lie to you.
All right.
And then season 2, which just dropped, another thing happened. I was like, oh gosh, I didn't see that coming. Wow. I'm in. I'm all in now. And it's, again, some more character development where people are changing and evolving, and who they were in season 1 is not necessarily who they are in season 2 because they've been affected by this life that they're having to lead. And so, yeah, man, all these crime dramas, I had to leave America to get some, but they're worth it, I'm telling you.
Okay. Yeah, because, and I've said this many times, any show with subtitles I'm out on. I'm just not going to do it unless I'm trying to learn another language. The dubbing, I will have to see if it drives me insane or not. But
well, see, I don't. It took me a minute to figure out that the undercover was in Belgium. So that's how good it was.
All right. I mean, there's a lot of shows that I want to watch before I get to the foreign dubbed subtitled show. In Queen's Gambit is a great example of that.
Okay, I'm telling you, man. Out of the three, Good Morning Veronica, Undercover, Blood on Rome. Blood on Rome is worth going through whatever you got to go through to watch it.
All right, I'll see if I can find it and at least check it out.
It is amazing what they do.
Yeah, because honestly, there are shows that I know that are really good where if it's all like a European cast, we tend to be out on those because sometimes the accents are so heavy. Like, I'm not trying to focus that hard to understand what the hell you're saying, unless I already know that it's going to be a really good show.
Right? Oh, I don't know. Did I tell you I got Apple TV?
No.
Oh, I got Apple TV. And they've got a couple good shows.
Yeah, Apple TV is supposed to have some good ones, but I'm not going to invest in another thing.
Well, here's the deal. I bought an iPad, and so I got it for free for a year. And then I put it in my phone when to cut it off.
Oh, okay. I got you.
But no, Apple TV is, they got some really good shows on there. I've already been through one called Tehran, which is much like Fauda, Middle East double agent kind of thing. And that was really good. A lot of tension, a lot of drama.
All right.
I'll come back to the U.S. one day, man, but I'm enjoying my time overseas.
I suppose so. I mean, there are some different shows. Like, we still got to do The Mandalorian Season 2, but, I'm not as concerned about that right now because they just release an episode a week, so at one point we'll just jump in on it and zoom through all of it. So that's Disney Plus's loss because I'm just not a fan of the episode at a time in this world. And we even do that. Like, the one network television show that we watch is This Is Us. And we even do that with that now, where we'll let 2 or 3 episodes accumulate and then go through and watch them and then let it go back and accumulate again. Because whenever we watch one episode, we want to at least see what happens next. I mean, that's what it is. So
right.
You got to do. I mean, even if they were doing 2 episodes at a time, maybe you could get me hooked doing that every week, but 1 episode a week, I'll just wait, man. I have no problem waiting for a few weeks because there's just too much out there that I can go and enjoy while I'm waiting to binge watch your 8-episode season.
Exactly.
Welcome to reality, Disney Plus. So I think those are the next 2 that we're going to go for is the Queen's Gambit. We're going to check that out when The Wire is done. And then, as I just mentioned, The Mandalorian. So we shall see. But there's a lot of great shows. You can't watch them all, unless you're Jacques, apparently.
No, you can't watch them all, but I have fun trying.
I mean, wow.
No, we hadn't talked about this in a couple of weeks, so.
No, we haven't. And so you've got a lot. And to be fair, with The Wire, when you're trying to crush an entire, because we're not just doing a season of The Wire, we're doing all 5 seasons, and we don't want to jump in on other shows while we're trying to knock out 5 seasons of The Wire, which ends up being, I think it's the first 4 seasons have 13 episodes, and season 5 has 10 episodes. So however many that is that you're trying to knock out in however long it goes.
Yeah, whereas I watched, I think, 8 episodes of Veronica, 8 episodes of Undercover, and then I had a bunch of episodes, 3 seasons worth. That's probably 30 shows of Blood on Rome.
Yeah, man, you must have just blown through that. Jesus.
Well, it was so good. I mean, like I said, I was doing a lot of other stuff while I was watching it, but yeah, it was high quality, man.
All right, apparently so. And joining us once again here this week, our NFL film analyst from the Dallas Morning News. You can read his work online. Always encourage you to follow him on Twitter for his great breakdowns of film from the Cowboys. It is John Owning. And John, it's interesting because Jacques and I were talking about this on a couple of versions of the podcast that we've put out. And then you come out with this article about players you're most excited to see here in the second half, the final 7 games of the season. But who would be on your list? In a perfect world, the one guy you want to see more of as the Cowboys close out this year?
You know damn well who's at the top of the list.
I'm pretty sure I do.
Well, for me personally, just for selfish reasons, it would be Bradley and the pass rusher out of Utah, who's had a total of 6 defensive snaps this entire year, which is way less than I thought he would get coming in. But I would just like to see him because just to see what he can contribute to the Cowboys moving forward. I mean, my evaluation coming out of the draft was that he was much better than where he was drafted. I think that he had pass rush tools that would allow him to make a decent impact early because of how refined his hand usage and footwork is. So I would love to see him more, especially because I don't think Dorrance Arms, despite what Jerry Jones, I guess, said this morning, I don't think Dorrance Armstrong has really been that impressive, and it's definitely not impressive enough to keep an eye off the field. He hasn't been very impactful as a run defender or as a pass rusher. So I guess the one guy I would want to see most is Bradley Anae, just because I think that he can make a contribution, and I think he's going to have a big impact on the defense moving forward in 2021, 2022, 2023.
Well, John can probably tell you his one snap against the New York Giants many weeks ago, he did hit the quarterback as he threw the pass.
He did. He hit a nice little inside-outside move on a tight end where he fainted like he was going inside, clubbed them, went outside, and got vertical and got a pressure. So, it would be nice to be able to see that a couple more times. Why do
you think it's been that he has only gotten the 6 snaps, especially in a year in which obviously things aren't going their way? You would think they'd be wanting to find out what Bradley and I could do with more snaps.
I just think it was a numbers thing at the beginning of the season when they had Everson Griffin, Alden Smith, Marcus Lawrence, Dorrance Armstrong all in front of them. They seem like they want to run a rotation with those 4 edge defenders really primarily. And then when the Cowboys got rid of Everson Griffin, I thought, okay, here's a chance for tonight. And then Randy Gregory came back, and that just put him right back behind the 8 ball where he's at 5th defensive end, and he's kind of the young guy in the situation. So I think it's a combination of him just being the rookie and then the depth that the Cowboys have at defensive end / outside linebacker position. I mean, that's honestly one of the only positions that hasn't been ravaged by injuries from the Cowboys this season, and that's just been unlucky for a night that not allowing him to see the field like other rookies have been able, or other young players have been able to see the field at other positions.
Or maybe they're also doing this. Maybe they're doing for Dorrance Armstrong what you want to see them do for Bradley and I, which is, okay, you've never really had a chance to play. We're going to give you a chance to play, to see who and what you are, because we know if you are what you appear to be, you won't be here next year. We just want to make sure before we let you go.
That would make sense. That would make a lot of sense, because he's a young guy as well. I think his contract, he has 1 more year under contract, right. So it would make sense. But the team wants to evaluate where he's standing. Hopefully, the 9 games in the first half of the season were enough. In the last 7, they'll be able to start adding in an eye. I mean, I think in my head, by December, they're going to have to be giving him more snaps, especially if hopefully somebody in the NFC East starts running away with the division a little bit. Put at least more than a game and a half separation between the Cowboys and first place. Okay, now I got to tell you, man, I'm interested in this guy, but I'm only interested because, okay, y'all know me, man. It's just me. It is what it is. So I'm asking a question. Michael Gelkin, Dallas Morning News, wrote a story the other day, and he basically said, wow, what a break for the Cowboys. They got Rondell Carter back. And I'm like, I don't care if he was the highest paid undrafted free agent that they paid the most money to. He was a practice squad guy in Dallas. He got plucked up by the Colts. They cut him. Why should I be so excited about a guy who was a practice squad guy in Dallas and got cut in with the Colts, and now we got him back? Big whoop-de-doo. Because there's not much to be excited about when your team's 2-8 or 2-7. Okay, that's honestly what it comes down to. But the thing is, he does come with a lot of production at James Madison. I think him and his teammate combined for over 115 pressures last year and over 20 sacks for James Madison. He was extremely productive. He's a guy who played with power. He wasn't really a speed guy. He plays with power, plays with hand technique. And I think the Cowboys moved him inside the defensive tackle, if I read that same Gelkin story correctly. And the Cowboys need help at defensive tackle. So I am willing and excited to see any potential talent that the Cowboys have at defensive tackle that could help them moving forward, because they just don't have much there right now. Outside of maybe Antoine Woods plays pretty well in the Neville. Gallimore flashed a lot in the Pittsburgh game, but he was pretty bad before then. So I'm honestly excited to evaluate any new defensive tackles that are able to get some playing time. We're talking with John Owning, of course, our NFL film analyst. You can read his work in the Dallas Morning News, of course, online on Twitter. I would encourage you to follow him at John Owning. But another guy who, and this may be a name that Cowboys fans have forgotten about because he was drafted and you haven't seen him at all since. But of course, that was the cornerback that they are converting to safety. It feels almost like, and Jacques and I referenced this just the
other day, like a redshirt year in college where they say, okay, hey, we believe in you, but you're not ready for this right now. Let's go ahead and sit you for a while. Then I saw in your latest column, you also kind of called it a redshirt year. Is it time to start seeing Reggie Robinson, even though he is brand new to that position?
Yeah, I would personally like to see him. I would even like to see him get more snaps just on special teams. You know, just a guy with his athleticism, his size, his length, I think would be could be a valuable player on special teams. But he hasn't even been trusted there, which kind of worries me. The more and more I think about it, the more I think about him coming out. He was a guy they built as an outside press corner who could potentially be the second starting corner with Trevon Diggs in the future, 2 or 3 years down the line. And they're already moving to safety. Does give me some pause, given what he was billed to be coming out. I mean, you don't see many guys who are billed as press physical corners get moved to safety very often. So I'm really interested to see just kind of what role they envision him. Is he going to be kind of like a box slot, cover big tight ends, cover big slot, kind of what Xavier Woods has been doing in Nolan's system, or is he going to be that free safety guy they want to play deep who can get his hands on a lot of balls, uses speed, range to cover large distances in the back half of the defense? But I just really want to see that what role they envision him, because they kind of switched him over to safety pretty quickly in the process, given that they had a shortened ramp up to the season. So I just want to see what their vision is for him, because I'm kind of in the dark. You know, they say safety, but there's so many different things that a safety can do that I'm kind of in the dark. I just want to know what are they going to do with him moving forward. And like I said before, I would like to see what kind of contributions he can provide on special teams.
What about Gilbert?
Yeah, I think Gilbert is someone who I would like to see if he can build off what he did against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I mean, we all know the Steelers defense is a top 3 defense in the NFL this year. They're undefeated, and he wasn't awful. You know, and the fact that he wasn't awful, that he could be maybe slightly better against slightly less defenses, and someone who can prove to be a decent backup quarterback for you in the future, and the fact that he could save you some money against the cap and compared to re-signing Andy Dalton, which is only going to save you $1 million, maybe $1.5 million on the cap. But when you have to sign Dak Prescott to potentially $40 million per year, and you're going to be up against it on the salary cap, I think things like that could be a valuable way to penny pinch. So I think the Cowboys are missing out on an opportunity to evaluate a potential cheaper cheaper backup by going back to Dalton here.
Yeah, which makes sense. Yeah, it happens to the best of us. You know, I'm kind of curious. You watch all the films, you watch all the snaps. When you watch this defense play, do you see that this is just they don't understand the scheme, and that this is something that they need to go out and get different players, and we'll see some changeover in the offseason, obviously? Or is this more of a talent issue, and the guys that they have just aren't good enough?
I think it's a combination of things. I think definitely at the beginning of the season, it was a scheme issue. We saw all the miscommunications that were happening, all the free runners in the secondary, all the missed run fits, all of the, bad communication, passing off receivers in coverage, all those things at the beginning of the season. But they've done a better job of that lately. You haven't seen as many coverage busts. You haven't seen as many obvious run fit misses. So I think the biggest thing they need to do, because it seems like they're kind of stuck on keeping this scheme, is they definitely need to retool the talent. They just have too many players that aren't optimal fits for the scheme because they were built up in Rod Marinelli. I'm talking about like guys like Tyrone Crawford, guys like Jordan Lewis. These guys just aren't good fits for the defense. So you kind of need to retool the defense, bring in guys who are more comfortable playing in a scheme more akin to Nolan's, especially on the defensive tackle positions, and maybe a slot corner, safety position next to Xavier Woods. Those are positions I think that need particular upgrading and retooling this year with new talent. Some people that are just more comfortable doing the things that Nolan wants them to do, rather than trying to transition their skill set to do something that they've never done before and they're not really comfortable doing.
Unless, of course, Nolan's not here. Then you'll have to adjust to the new defensive
Exactly. We'll be asking this question again.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think that's one of the interesting things is because we are kind of seeing some of those things that you talked about, John, where, okay, if you're going to keep Mike Nolan, I think you're going to see a lot of guys that have to be moved on from. But if you're not going to keep him, then it's almost like, why'd you bring him in? Because it became a throwaway season, almost like experimenting, like, we have guys that fit one scheme. Let's see if they'll work in this one. Oh, they don't. Oh, well, waste of a year. It's really strange.
Yeah, it is. It is really odd that the pandemic just hit the Cowboys at a really, really odd position because unlike the other teams that changed coaching staffs, the Cowboys are almost making change schemes on the opposite end of the spectrum. They went from a one-gapping single high defense to a read and react defensive line that's playing a lot of two high quarters, Tampa 2. So they almost went in an almost polar opposite of what they were doing last year, whereas other teams kind of stayed in the same corner on the same spectrum that they were already on before. So it facilitated the transition a little bit easier, whereas the Cowboys were just like, oh, well, we're going this way. Well, now we're going the exact opposite. And that is going to obviously take a lot more time to transition. And when you lose the prep time because of the pandemic, it's just going to throw everything haywire, as we have seen with the defense this year.
No doubt.
The last thing we wanted to get into you with, John, is Cheeto returns this week. Should we expect from Cheeto after so many weeks gone? And can he adequately replace, I guess, Trayvon Diggs?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think Cheeto is the best pure cover guy on the team, even when Diggs is healthy. I think he just limits the amount of separation better than any other cornerback on the roster. He's athletic. He plays well from off coverage. He is one of the smarter cornerbacks. Before his injury, he had the least amount of coverage busts, I would say, among the players that were getting some run time. But as we all know, his issues have been playing the ball at the catch point. So I'm going to be interested to see what's going to happen there when you've been off for what's it been? He's been out for at least 5 or 6 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how much time it takes him to transition to playing the ball in the air, because I think that's the thing that's the most unnatural part of playing cornerback for him. So that's the part that I'm going to be keeping particularly close eye on, and I'm sure the rest of the fan base is, because they love to jump on Cheeto anytime he gives up a reception.
Man, that's the truth. All right,
yes, sir.
John Owning, we really appreciate the time. Thanks for the expertise as always.
Hey, thank you guys for having me on. Have a great day.
All right, you too,
Thanks,
man.
brother.
All right, and there he is, our NFL film analyst, John Owning of the Dallas Morning News. Always good to hear from him. So one more sponsor to tell you guys about here on the podcast. And of course, we've talked about this many, many times because they're damn good and they support us, so we support them. The wings available for you at Kroger. Go get them. Buy them now so that they're ready to grill for your weekend. You can sit out on your patio that you just built like Jacques. You can throw them on and grill them, or you can throw them in your air fryer, however you want to enjoy them. The wings at Kroger, 2 flavors, mango habanero, buffalo blue cheese. Not available at every North Texas Kroger location, but the vast majority have the wings. You walk back to the meat counter. They're the wings you see in the window. They're not breaded. It's just meat and flavor, and they're fantastic. They are fantastic. And so, actually, you know what? I think we're going to the store later this afternoon, which means I'll be picking up some more wings from Kroger.
3 pounds?
I don't know if I'll do 3. Well, no, I have Maddox this weekend, so yeah, I may do 3 pounds again. 3 pounds is a lot. I think 2 pounds is probably the way to go for a couple of people, but 3 pounds, 3 pounds, definitely 4 pounds if you're trying to have a lot of fun, man. But you can get them at the meat counter at Kroger. So get on out there whichever one is close to you, and see if they've got either the buffalo blue cheese or the mango habanero, and enjoy those this weekend. One thing that I'm hoping to enjoy this weekend, because this is getting quite interesting, but Texas, who had a bye week last week in the world of college football, plays Kansas this weekend. That should be an easy win, but let's face it, the chair under Tom Herman is getting hotter and hotter, it seems like, as each week goes by in the pandemic season of collegiate football, where Tom Herman, now in year 4 there at Texas, has not done what I think the promise was, especially of 2 years ago when they beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and then had the really disappointing year last year. You already lost to TCU and OU this year, and I think people are kind of looking at Tom Herman going, okay, when's this going to happen?
I don't know. I think the Texas AD is still trying to figure out when it's going to happen. And this is what happens, man, when you have patterns of behavior. Like Texas AD his pattern of behavior is to tweet out congratulations to teams after wins and all this other stuff. And it doesn't matter whether it's the volleyball team, the baseball team, the basketball team, whatever. But then he went silent on the football team after their big win. And there were a bunch of questions like, hey, is this on purpose? Is he mad? Whatever. He's like, oh, no, it's no big deal. And let me tell you something, man. This is the first rule of journalism, man. Everything happens for a reason. It just does. And so the reason can be a big deal or it can be a not big deal. Mm-hmm. But if Chris Del Conte is not has been tweeting about the football team for the first couple years, every time they do something nice, and then he stops tweeting, the obvious question is, you mad, bro? I mean, it's the obvious question. Tom Herman has such a big buyout that it's hard to picture them firing him. But, dude, all it takes is one dude with long pockets, or maybe two, to say we are tired of this and Urban Meyer's available. And we want to go win. Let's go do it.
Yeah, I think this would have to be one of those situations, honestly, that you would have something in place, some sort of an agreement with Urban Meyer that we're only going to make this move if you're coming. Because otherwise there's no point in making it. You just wait another year and say, okay, do you want to come now? Right. Because I don't know who else is out there that is such a hot candidate that fits Texas, that can get them to where they want to go, the way that an Urban Meyer obviously could walk in the doors and quite honestly just change the program in 1 year. Tom Herman, I don't know. He's got his buyout is like $18 million plus, but then keep in mind, he also has some of the highest paid assistant coaches in the country. So to buy him out along with the staff, because it's not like you're going to fire Herman and then go get somebody and be like, hey, but you got to work with these guys. Right. So to buy out his staff is somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million.
Well, he needs to give his agent a hand clap because he got a nice deal. I think the disappointing thing for me, because I've been a Tom Herman guy, man. I thought he was great at Ohio State. I thought he would be great at Texas. I hesitate to use this language, but I shall use it anyway. He's soft, man. And here's what I mean by soft. You're Tom Herman. You're at the University of Texas. You got 1,000 built-in advantages that you can't figure out how to take advantage of. I don't want to hear the University of Texas head coach whining about, hey, Matt, people are negatively recruiting us because they think I'm going to get fired. That's just soft, man. Yeah. It's just weak. You want me to tell you how you stop all that stuff, man? Don't lose to TCU. Beat OU on a regular basis. I didn't say you had to win every game against OU. This ain't Ohio State, Michigan. But, you win 5, they win 5. Maybe you win 3 in a row, then they win 3 in a row. Maybe you win 2, they win 2. Maybe you win 2, they win 1. Whatever. Just beat them on a regular basis. It's all good. OU is a good program. Nobody expects you to sweep them every year. Texas, by Texas's standards, and the recruiting classes that they put together, they've massively underachieved. And he's at the heart of it, man. He can't figure out how to get it going. And it shouldn't be that damn hard, man. It just shouldn't be. Not at Texas.
You wouldn't think so. And yeah, they're 5-2, but keep in mind, 2 of those wins, one was a miraculous, how in the world did you do that against Tech at home? The other one, I'll give you some credit. You go on the road and you beat a good Oklahoma State team in overtime. And then your other 2 wins, it's not like you blew out Baylor. And the last time we saw them play, it went right down to the end against West Virginia. And West Virginia is not a good program. So that's become a thing of, you look at some of these programs, and not necessarily the Ohio States and the Alabamas of the world, but there are some programs, Georgia's an example of this, maybe Florida. I don't know if I'd put anyone in the Pac-12, but there are programs in the country that might lose 1 or 2 games a year, but then out of their other 10 games, they blow out 7 out of 10 guys. Like they're just manhandling and throttling teams in their conference. Texas is barely getting past teams in the Big 12.
And that's a lot of the problem. They don't have enough. And, I think the draft tells you about this. They don't have enough guys lately that have been first-round picks or second-round picks or third-round picks or premium guys in the draft. Not a lot of linemen going up high. Not a lot of, you tell me because you follow them a lot closer than I do. When's the last time they had a skill position guy go in the first round?
Man. That's a very good question.
Like, I'm serious. Like, I'm just like, who? I'm sure there's somebody. I mean,
I'm not kidding you.
It has to be somebody since Vince.
No, like literally off the top of my head, I think Vince Young was the last skill position player to go in the first round.
Well, see, dog, I mean, that's just hard to win like that, man. You might be right. And then you start going, okay, when's the last time you had a running back in the first round? It's probably Ricky. How long ago was that?
Years ago.
You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When's the last time you had a receiver go in the first round? You're like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a long-ass time, and I'm going back through this right now because, it was Vince Young as the last skill position player taken in the first round of the NFL draft. That was 2006. But you also have to realize, they haven't had a guy taken in the first round at any position since 2015 when Malcolm Brown was taken with the last pick by the Patriots, and he was a defensive tackle.
Now, this is what I'm saying. They have these top recruiting classes, but they're not being developed or they're not translating into first-round picks. And again, we're using these for purposes of discussion. Now, just look at Alabama. Alabama has a top recruiting class every year.
Mm-hmm.
And they send, must be 7, 8, 9 guys from that 25 or 30 they sign every year to the NFL. Lots of first-round picks. Lots of second-round picks. You ain't got to think hard to find out the last time Alabama had a first-round receiver or running back. Maybe running back they haven't had, but they can get them in the second round. You know what I'm saying? Clemson. Now that they've gotten good, what happens with Clemson?
Yeah.
They got guys going. And so what I'm saying is the stars matter, man. I'm talking about the 5 stars. The stars matter because that's what helps elevate you.
Sure.
And get you up there. And Texas hasn't developed the guys because they're getting 5 and 4s, but they're not developing them for whatever reason. Because everybody misses out on some guys. Oh, I thought this guy was going to be a star, and he's all right, but he ain't special.
Right.
Everybody misses out on some guys, but Texas seems to miss out on more than they hit on, and that's been a problem because you got to have players, man. Like at Alabama, Waddle, who's hurt this year. All I know is every time I saw a dude play, he's running past 5 guys for a touchdown.
Right, yeah, because they blow teams out in their own conference. Like the teams they're West Virginias, they're Baylor's, and the SEC. Alabama beats those teams by 3 or 4 touchdowns year in and year out.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they got guys who make plays. Nick Saban's a great coach and all this, but Alabama got guys who make plays, man. And they make plays on offense and they make plays on defense. And what I'm getting at is Texas. Texas doesn't have a lot of guys who make plays. Like we saw Bijan Robinson make that 50-yard run or whatever it was a couple weeks ago.
Right.
That was a play.
Right.
Because he spun out the hole. He made one guy miss. He stiff-armed another guy. He tiptoed the sideline, and he's down 60 yards before they snatch him from behind. Okay, now, can you do that on a regular basis? Not just one time. But you need like 6 or 7 guys on your team doing that once a game. And then that's how you win. And for whatever reason, man, they don't have that. They don't have the guy where we throw you the bubble screen and you just run 4-2 and you throw up the deuce sign as you walk into the end zone. Yeah, they don't. And it's to your point about the draft picks. It was Cedric Benson was the last running back they had taken in the first round. That was 2005, I believe. And then Roy Williams was the last wide receiver taken in the first round back in 2004. And that was it. You know, this is not a program that pumps out high-level NFL talent. No, that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example. So they had a quarterback in 2006, a running back in 2004, and when did Roy Williams come out? 2005? Yeah, I think it was 2004, 2005, yeah. Okay. What kind of team did Texas have back then, bro? Well, it was a competitive team, obviously. That was at the beginning. A national championship caliber team. Yeah, I mean, they were winning national titles right there. And then, of course, after they lost to Alabama, I mean, they've had some defensive guys that have been taken, in the first round. But offensively, they have not had that level of player at any of the skill positions, whether it's quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. None of that stuff has, at Texas in the last 10 years, been on a level that you see other programs that compete that are considered the 5, 6, 7 best programs in the country year in and year out are able to do. And that's why they are where they are. And if Tom Herman doesn't get it fixed, he won't be. I mean, they'll find somebody that they think can do it at some point.
Yeah, they will. And it very well may be this offseason. I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, obviously, when you look at the Texas schedule, they're 5-2 right now, and there's only 3 games left. It's Kansas. They've got Iowa State, who's actually, at least right now, 17th in the country. And then they go on the road to K-State. If they lose one of those games, I could see them looking at it and going, okay, so we finished 7-3. You lost to TCU, and then, my God, if you lose to K-State or Kansas, that may be the loss where they say this just isn't working, and maybe some of those big-pocketed boosters at Texas. But again, I do think it would be contingent on we want to make a move. You go tell Urban Meyer, are you coming if we make a move? And if not, you say, well, what's the point? Let's give Urban another season and see how it plays out.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, Urban Meyer will get it flipped.
Oh, he'll flip it in 1 year. Urban Meyer will come in here, and in 1 year, this will be a 10-win team.
Yeah.
That's just his track record. And then in year 2, he might win a national title for you.
He now, you in the playoff.
And then if you're Texas, you got to realize you're probably getting a 4-year window with Urban Meyer before he gets burned out and walks away from it again. But in 4 years, he could turn this program around to a point to where they are then competitive afterwards. And he's got his anointed guy that I've got the programs where you need it to be. I've set it up to win. This is the dude who will continue in my footsteps.
You're Ryan Day.
Exactly. You're that guy. We'll see. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. But thanks for listening to the Jam Session podcast. Find us on Instagram at Jam Session Cast. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a couple of live shows that we do on there and whatnot at Jam Session Podcast. We're on Twitter at McMatt Radio at JJT_journalist. Thanks to Purple Elephant Music for the music you hear at the end and beginning of each episode. He is the radio and TV star and now podcast sensation, the sexy Jean-Jacques Taylor, and I'm just a guy, Matt McLaren. Please remember to tell a friend to check out the Jam Session podcast. Help us grow this thing. We really appreciate you listening, downloading, and subscribing, and of course, rate and review. And we'll catch you next time on the Jam Session podcast, available everywhere you listen to podcasts.